Hi, welcome. In this video, I want to take a couple minutes to respond by way of Sean O'Shea from The Good Dog. And again, another social media post put out by balanced dog trainers, again, talking about certain aspects of training. And on this video here called Zero F's Given, want to respond by way again of filling in some gaps here when you hear trainers talking about advocating certain certain concepts, and in this case, talking about devices. So let's play some of this. I'm gonna stop along the way to offer my perspective as to how everything aligns, including when it comes to devices themselves.
Okay, gang, so let's go down this old familiar road one more time. The goal is to get rid of the problems. The goal isn't to get rid of the tools, right? Unfortunately, many folks, both in the balance community, but also in the positive only force-free community, will point fingers, wag their fingers, shame, passively aggressively poke you and try and make you feel less than if you need to use tools for your dogs.
So I stop it here. So I understand now. I talk about, getting it right. Okay. When I talk about a foundation, understanding what training is. Again, I talk about, you watch my videos, I'm very specific, okay, as to what represents training once a relationship problem is underway between you and your dog. Okay. It takes a path of a intervention. I talk about at the social level. Okay. The core ingredients I talk about, influence and control, how they're reconciled by way, again, of a intentional interaction based method. Okay. That reconciles those core ingredients, that changes the perception of dogs the right way, and that aligns everything through that, including devices. However, okay, when you hear trainers out there, including, O'Shea and other balanced dog trainers, when you hear them advocating, okay, and even when you hear them go on, in fact, in this case here, you'll hear Sean O'Shea trying to call out all sides, okay, including within their own groups, trying to kind of set themselves apart, okay, from this somehow different. But I want to be clear about something here. They're not different, okay? Understand that, and this isn't specific to O'Shea. I'm talking about you watch my videos, I talk about, balance training, force free training. I talk about any approach that does not reconcile those core ingredients, that leaves that door completely wide open, okay, to perceptive dogs not changing, okay. And again, this gets in this whole thing about, I talk about a counterfeit picture of change. I talk about a fake and phony picture within the framework of response. Okay, this is the problem. Okay, dogs moving around and looking great, okay, as they respond, but their perceptions of you, of the dog owner, aren't changing whatsoever. Okay, understand this is inherent to systems, inherent to approaches that do not approach training in a way. And again, the way is again, specific to a interaction-based method that's going to close that door, that's going to reconcile those core ingredients. That's the only way. Okay, so this whole thing about there's more than one way. I talk about that. Now, there's appears to be more than one way based on appearances. Okay, understand this is the trap. This is the problem. So here you can hear O'Shea talk about these devices, basically saying, well, no big deal. Just if you have to, devices are devices. Yeah, keep them on dogs. So be it. Well, see, that's the problem here. Okay, when I talk about this whole thing about the problem with devices, whether it's, the dog seems better, okay, when the device is on the dog. So just leave it on the dog. Well, that's problematic, okay, because it's about change, about you as the individual, as the human being perceived, okay, the right way beyond leaving remote collars on the dog, using a prong collar to get a better walk. Okay, it's about you perceived the right way that transcends and moves beyond devices. Okay, devices, understand, devices are an extension of how you're seen. Okay, they bring those core ingredients into the frame. Okay, to create change. Okay, understand that. So let's play some more of this.
And this has always made zero sense to me because the goal is to find a way to help pet dog owners living with regular pet dogs to live the very, very best life. And if utilizing tools, however long that is,
Like living your best life now. Where have you heard that before? I talk about in my Christian walk, the kind of Joel Osteen, power from within, right? And see, understand this is the problem here. It's like a prosperity message. It's based on appearances. Okay, understand that, it's you want to live your best life now. It's about being seen the right way, being perceived the right way, being in harmony with nature. That's your not just your best life, it's gonna be your dog's best life as well.
helps owners and dogs live harmoniously, happy, healthy, and safe lives, then who gives a fuck if you're using
But see, what does that mean to him? Okay, that's the problem here. I talk about appearances. Okay, what all these trainers basing the dog living a happy life? How do you know what level of stress is on that dog that's continuing to see you not the right way? Okay, there's a stress load that comes onto that dog, and it's constant. That's a problem here. You see it. Dog can never truly let it go. Okay, you talk about like say stress on the human, REM sleep, right? You can't settle. And see, that's the problem. This whole thing with appearances. So there's no depth here. There's no connecting dots because understand these trainers, okay, they're not approaching training for what it truly represents at the beginning. Okay, I talk about this sets up this fake picture. So understand when these trainers are trying to establish or trying to market or put out to say, well, this dog is good. Well, the question you have to ask, well, what's the criteria to establish that in the first place?
tools? The argument is that the dog is not actually trained if it needs the tools. My whole thing is, I don't care about the fucking argument. What I care about is the reality. If the tools enable you to live a higher quality of life with your dog, then you should be excluding any other nonsensical information and messaging trying to get into your brain and undermine your use of those tools because
And that's the problem. So here he's focusing again. Understand that anything that comes from a superficial process that does not connect dots properly, does not establish what training is, that does not reconcile the core ingredients I talk about, okay, everything that comes from that branches off of that. Even the discussion about tools isn't going to align. Okay, so you'll get these narratives of we'll just leave the tools on the dog. There's this type of drive-through mentality that, and then the remote collar's on the dog 24/7. And then you take the collar off the dog, and right away it's like there's okay, this isn't right here. I don't have, I'm not seeing the way that I need to be because I sense right away this dog is not seeing me the right way. So the tool is not aligning through what's intended usage is by way of perceptions changing of you, okay, the right way. Moving beyond the tools. Tools are just a means to, they're supposed to be a means to an end, but they're an extension of the relationship. Understand everything's about relationship. And so understand when you hear these narratives of these trainers, they're not really fixing anything, okay, in the sense of confronting what the real issue is in the dog training world. Understand, there's just kind of like it's this superficial surface thing going on here with these trainers, where it's just like, and how they in even when they're talking about say the force free side of things, they're still staying within their ideological comfort zone. They're still not confronting the real issue. And you see this all the time in these podcasts. These trainers go on these podcasts and they talk because you'll never actually hear them actually confront what the real issue is because it puts them, even a balanced dog trainer, in the exact same uncomfortable position as the force free trainer because they're aligned the same way. They're jumping in the same way. The differences are really again superficial in the sense of both these groups are not reconciling the core ingredients properly to begin with. Understand both these groups because they've built their system off of this idea that training's a learning based exercise. And core ingredients aren't reconciled that way. Just understand that here. So this is a a type of a narrative that's based on a superficial idea of things to begin with. To say, well, because when you frame this up, say, well, a balanced dog trainer is better than force-free trainers. My response is yes and no. Okay. And but you're still not fixing the real issue, and that you have all these dogs out there. That, again, what's the end result? Can't get these devices off the dogs, and you hit these narratives out there that just shouldn't. If you have devices and dogs that are happier with the devices on, then no one should question that. Well, I question it. I question the fact of, well, the relationships truly hasn't been fixed to begin with.
What they're trying to do is get you to second guess. Here's the funny part. Second guess the benefits, the value, the safety, the lack of stress, all of the great things that you're getting from having your dogs trained and on.
So you're talking about lack of stress, okay? But again, now the narrative's not that's not based on the reality of what training is. When you have an ongoing relationship problem, the tools end up staying on the dog. Dog's still under stress because the relationship itself has not been reconciled in terms of perceptions changing at that level. That's going to take the stress off the dog. So again, all to say, okay, when I talk about balanced trainers, understand that this is the game they play. They're like they want their cake and eat it too, and they're actually balanced dogs. Is what they're doing. They're playing both sides of the fence here. That's what they're doing. So when I put messaging out to say, here it is. Here's the truth of it. It's a hard message based on, how popular this ideology is, what these trainers are marketing, and how they're playing both sides. It's so easy to do. But the reality is all these dogs and the blame shifting still, all part of it. The force-free movement still taking over. I talk about the big picture part of this. And these trainers are just totally not going to talk about it because it takes them outside their ideological comfort zone. So again, just food for thought. I want to respond to this. You see this video put out, zero F's given. Well, I say there's more than just zero F's given. There's a lot of F's given. Just the fact that these trainers are not willing to confront the real issue in the dog training world. Thanks for watching.